Welcome, everybody. Good evening. I'm so glad to be with you once again. Buenas tardes a todos. Estoy muy contenta de estar con ustedes nuevamente. ¿Qué pasó con mi internet? Ok, todo está bien. Estoy muy contenta de estar con ustedes nuevamente. Qué bueno que podamos tener el día de hoy nuestro live sobre verbos más preposiciones en español. Today we're gonna have the verbs with prepositions in Spanish. This is a core topic in Spanish. I think no matter like in any language, this topic is so relevant and so important because it is not handled the same way in both languages. Now, it is impossible. It is impossible to find two languages having the same package of verbs plus prepositions, like or at least the verbs and prepositions that can be fully equivalent or that can be fully the same. It is impossible. Actually, prepositions in any language is the I really love calling this the DNA of every language. Why? Because you can, well, this is something that I do. You can spot someone else's, or you can spot anyone's native language, even if this person is speaking in a second language, in a foreign language. You can spot the speaker's native language or actual native language based on the way they are using the prepositions in this second language. Like if they make mistakes in this prepositions, that will be based on the the pattern or based on the logic from their own language. And this normally happens with prepositions, like handling prepositions, verbs plus prepositions. So today is a very, very important topic to start understanding how Spanish works from the prepositions perspective. So let's get started right away. I will share my screen, and here we go. I wanted to label this class as parte uno. This is part one or first part, because of course today's verbs plus prepositions are not the only verbs and prepositions that are available in Spanish language, for sure. So verbs are infinite. They are not infinite, but there is a huge list of verbs in all languages. And normally each verb, I won't say that it's 100%, like I won't say that it's always, but oftenly, most of those verbs work with a preposition, with a specific preposition. So it's crucial that we understand that this is just the first part, but in next weeks, we will continue with part two, part three, etc., because there are lots of verbs working with prepositions in any language, but today we will focus on Spanish. Okay, so let's see. I'd like to start, as always, as usual, with a question. Well, I'm sorry. Initially, it was supposed to be a question, but I changed it to a statement. If we see this statement in English, I'm thinking about you. How do we have to translate this phrase into Spanish? And when we are starting our journey as a Spanish student, we can feel tended to say, estoy pensando sobre ti. Why? Because, of course, the preposition about means sobre when we speak about something. But once we find out that the preposition about in Spanish is translated as sobre, we tend to think, we tend to assume that this translation will be the same for every sentence where the preposition about is playing a part, is placed or is being used. And this is not true. Okay, and this happens in English as well. So when we learn English, we can't assume that the prepositions that we use, hola Vero, hi, we can't assume that the prepositions in two languages will follow the same logic. Okay, so that's why when we say I'm thinking about you, this about won't be sobre, even though the translation of this word is it is actually sobre, but in this context, working for this verb, the verb think, but in Spanish, the correct preposition, the right preposition to be used is en. So, estoy pensando en ti. Estoy pensando en ti. Doesn't mean that the preposition about can be en. Not exactly. Remember, this logic, this is more the logic of a Spanish language, more than a simple translation. Okay, this is not a translation at all. This is, in this case, we're just looking for how the verb actually works in that language, and we simply say, okay, if I say I'm thinking about, the equivalence or the most likely translation without being a literal translation is estoy pensando en ti. But it doesn't mean that the preposition about means en. Of course, if you check out a dictionary, maybe you will see like in the word about, and you'll see different examples with its purpose, with its translation. And of course you'll see, oh, about, it can also be in, but always under very specific circumstances, like using the verb pensar in Spanish. Okay, so it is under those circumstances. I'm thinking about you will be estoy pensando en ti, no sobre ti. Okay, so we kickstarted with this, and now let's see some key points about today's topic. And this is more like an overview. We kickstarted with the question or the statement that we always start with a statement, but now let's see the overview. Today's topic is about verbs that must be used with specific prepositions in Spanish, and this is very important, how they can differ from English logic and vice versa. Okay? We can have a bunch of verbs plus their prepositions in English, and they are totally different from the Spanish logic. In Spanish, in English, many verbs stand alone or work with prepositions based on context. Okay, so that's why sometimes we say turn on, turn off. So the same verb is working with two different prepositions because it is up to know. It depends on the context. Oh, turn on, encender; turn off, apagar. But in Spanish, the preposition is fixed. It depends on the verb itself. You can't change it. Okay. If we go back to the example of turn on and turn off, we'll see that is apagar, like apagar, encender el televisor, turn the TV on or turn on the TV. Apagar el televisor, turn off the TV or turn the TV off. We don't add any preposition in this case for any of those verbs. Apagar el televisor, encender el televisor, and that's it. We don't use a preposition for this case, but in English we do. And the preposition changes according to if it's turn on or turn off. But in Spanish, we'll find a verb working with one or two or three prepositions in a fixed way and with different meanings oftenly. Okay, so for example, if we go back to our starting statement today, it says, estoy pensando en ti. Okay, so I already know that if what I'm thinking about is someone, so I have to use the preposition in. Okay, got it. But if I'm thinking of a topic, a subject, matter, I will say estoy pensando sobre el examen. I'm thinking about the test. Estoy pensando sobre el examen. So in this case, with a single verb, the verb pensar, we can see two options. Pensar en for people, pensar sobre for matters, topics, subjects, etc. Okay? And this is true. So you have think about, but in Spanish you have pensar en, pensar sobre. Those are fixed prepositions working with the same verb, but for very different contexts. And using the wrong preposition can completely change the meaning or sound unnatural. This is true for both languages, Spanish and English. That's why prepositions in a second language is normally the most difficult topic to master. Normally, it takes years to master, to fully handle with verbs and prepositions in a second language, because it is quite it is a very long topic, because as I said at the beginning, there are lots of verbs in every language, and the most part of those verbs are working with a preposition, and some of them are not just working with a single preposition but with different prepositions. So this is a topic that always, it doesn't matter the language, it doesn't matter how good you are at languages, this topic always takes years. Okay, so this is something that I always try to be very clear about, because students tend to feel very disappointed when they start speaking and they make mistakes with prepositions, but this is not an easy topic to handle. So be patient with yourselves. Okay, um, let's get started in this case with a list that I prepared with Spanish verbs, the meaning in English, and here, not in the center because these are two four columns, but here very well displayed, we have the preposition in Spanish. And if we compare it to the English one, we'll see that they don't always match. Okay. Now we already saw pensar en. Pensar en, this is literally to think in. Pensar en. En is a preposition that we use in Spanish to say in, on, in this case about, according to the verb to think about. But in Spanish we will use in. Pensar en, to think about. Below we can find soñar. And the preposition that is used with this verb in Spanish is a preposition con. Con is a preposition that in English is translated as with. So it's literally dream with. It doesn't make any sense in English, but in Spanish will be soñar con. This is the rule, and we can't change it. I'm sorry, but we can't change it. We can't. And that means to dream about or to dream of as well. Remember, in English, we have a dream about, dream of. Dream about when you are trying to explain, trying to tell what wasn't your dreams when you were sleeping, right? And dream of is more about like goals, wishes you have. This is the difference. In Spanish, we will use soñar con for both cases. When you are seeing, when you're watching the movie that you watch when you're sleeping, but also when you're dreaming of something like, oh, yo sueño con comprar una casa en la Toscana. Like I dream of buying a house in the Tuscany, in the Toscana, and I don't remember how to say that in English. There's that part in Italy that I need to move to. Okay, so preocuparse, to worry. In English, will be to worry about. So once again, we come across with come about, but here the preposition to be used is not en or sobre. No, the preposition will be por. And this is actually what we had in today's questionnaire because it is a very common verb in Spanish. Preocuparse por. Preocuparse por, to worry about. Por is equivalent to for. So it is basically to worry for. Depender de. De is a preposition that in English is translated as of, like of, or from. But here is working with the verb depend, to depend on. In Spanish, we say depender de plus a thing, like something or someone. Depender de. This is the preposition to be used. Maybe if you're already speaking in Spanish, if you're speaking too fast, you can let it, you can set it like not on purpose. It's just automatically set up in your brain that is it depend on, and then you say depender en. It happens a lot, but it's important to know that is depender de. Yeah, that there's always like motorcycles over there. You know how is in Latin America, motorcycles everywhere. So, insistir, insistir en. Oh, this is good because to insist on. So it's very similar. Great. Not always. It's not always like that, but great. We we won lottery here in this case. Insistir, insistir en. Insistir en algo, to insist on something. Casarse con, get married to. This is totally different. Here in Spanish, we're saying something like to get married with someone. Casarse con. Actually, we can also say to marry, like casarse con una idea. We can also say that, like to marry with an idea. Maybe you have a project, maybe you have I don't know, you're an entrepreneur, you have an entrepreneurship, I don't know. And you are so committed to that project, to that idea, that you feel like that you got married to that idea. So you can perfectly say casarse. Oh, él está casado con esa idea. He's too into this idea, this project. And the bottom one is one of the most common mistakes that I see in the class. Enamorarse de, to fall in love with. And even to be in love with, normally in the Spanish class is translated literally by the students, and they say enamorarse con. But here in Spanish we'll use de, like to fall in love of or to be in love of. That's what we say because this is the rule, this is the grammar rule, this is the combination that we have in Spanish. So it is not about that we want to make the things more complicated or that is like just on purpose. No, it is just the rules that we have, and we follow them as we do follow the English ones. So this is the first group, the first the first group. What other word I was thinking of? The first group of verbs plus their prepositions. Pensar en, soñar con, preocuparse por, depender de, insistir en, casarse con, enamorarse de. Out of these verbs, just one is very similar in both languages. Insistir en, insist on. Is the only one, but the rest are way different. And this first group has three more verbs, which are very interesting when it comes to their equivalents in English. Confiar en. This is to trust. It's so interesting because in English, the verb trust doesn't use any prepositions. You say, oh, I trust you. Yo confío en ti. I trust you. There's no prepositions in the middle, like in between the verb and the object pronoun. No, in English there's no, but in Spanish there is a preposition. Confiar en. Yo confío en ti. Confío en ti. Always, because you cannot say yo confío ti. Yo confío ella. No, this is a huge difference between those two actions in both languages. Confiar en, trust someone. Trust someone or trust something, like yo confío en eso. Yo confío en ese proyecto. Yo confío en esa situación. Alegrarse, sorry, I missed acordarse. This is a very good one. Acordarse de. This is to remember. Once again, in English, when it comes to this verb, remember, we don't have any prepositions in the middle. We'll see simply remember. Oh, I remember you. I remember the situation. But in Spanish, we'll have to add the preposition de. Acordarse de alguien or acordarse de algo. Maybe if you were connected, if you were in yesterday's live, you'll remember that we explained, that we talked about the reflexive verbs in Spanish. Maybe you already spotted that those two verbs, acordarse and alegrarse, those are reflexive verbs, of course, because they end in se, the particle se. Acordarse de, to remember. And of course, this verb is also very interesting because we have acordarse de, to remember, and also if it's not reflexive, if it's just acordar, not acordarse, but acordar, you are agreeing. Okay, if you say, oh, yo acordé con mi profesor ver clases todos los días. I agreed with my teacher on having classes every day. Ajá. But here in Spanish, you'll say, yo acordé con mi profesor de tener, o simply tener clases todos los días. So it depends. It depends if you're dealing with the verb acordar or acordarse. If it's acordarse, you'll say acordarse de. Maybe the Spanish students, the students of Spanish as a second language, maybe you guys have already seen recordar. And maybe right now you're having this question, like, okay, but remember, wasn't that recordar? Yes, we use both verbs. We use recordar and acordarse de. The difference is that recordar doesn't use any preposition. Yo recuerdo a mi abuela. Yo recuerdo. I'm so sorry. I'm so clueless sometimes. It does use a preposition. It does use a preposition. It uses the preposition a if what we are remembering is a person. Okay. Yo recuerdo a mi abuela. I remember my granny. But if we if what what we are remember, oh, what am I saying? If what we are remembering, yes, is a thing. Oh, I remember to write down a letter. Oh, yo recuerdo escribir una carta. Yo recuerdo escribir una carta. So, if we see it like as an overview, we can see that the verb remember can be recordar and acordarse. If it's working as recordar, we'll say recordar a alguien. And if it's something, if it's about something, not about someone, you say recordar algo, simply, without preposition, without any preposition in the middle. Remember, verb to remember can also be acordarse. But if you're using acordarse, you have to use the preposition de. O yo me acuerdo de mi abuela. Yo me acuerdo que tengo que escribir una carta. Hola a todos. Hola a todos. ¿Cómo están? Gracias por conectarse acá, por estar en esta clase. Thank you very much for being here with us in this class, in this live. Okay, so this is going to be like the summary, not the summary, I'm sorry, the final the final explanation when it comes to recordar and acordarse. Recordar, acordarse, both to remember. This is to remember. But they follow different rules when it comes to their prepositions. Recordar a alguien, recordar algo. Acordarse de alguien, acordarse de algo. That's it. And we close this first group, the first group that I decided that I chose to share with you guys today. Esta clase la siento, mi español es malo, pero estoy aquí para aprender. Great, genial, Obi Rose. Thank you very much for being here. These classes, when it comes to the basic and intermediate level, I tend to explain them in English. But for example, on Saturdays, I'll try to have a lives totally in Spanish to practice advanced Spanish classes. So great, you are so welcome. Well, everybody, every time, like Alejandro or Miguel. Well, Alejandro, Miguel, and Moises, they're always welcome. And Obi Rose, thank you very much. You will be always very, very welcome. Today, you can feel free to leave your comments here, your questions in the chat, in the comments box when this class is over, will be over. And of course, remember that we always leave homework for you to practice. And also, I have classes, recorded classes, totally explained in Spanish. English classes, but explained in Spanish. Okay, I don't understand. I just described looking forward to this. Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. You can practice your Spanish listening comprehension, having a look at this lessons that I'm talking about. We explain English, but totally from Spanish, and this is a very, very good material, a very, very good source for you to train your listening comprehension and, of course, improve your Spanish eventually. So great, welcome. So let's finish this group with alegrarse. Once again, a reflexive verb. And this is to be happy about. So in Spanish, as well as in English we have this, let's say, this fixed preposition when it comes to emotions, and this is about. I'm happy about, I'm worried about. Yes, when it comes to emotions, we tend to use about in English. In Spanish, we tend to use por when it comes to expressing emotions. Ella está feliz por, ella se preocupa por, él está triste por, etc. Normally, we use the preposition por when it comes to emotions, expressing emotions, feelings and emotions. But here, with the case of the verb alegrarse, to be happy, we can use both. We can use de and we can use por as well. In both cases, we can see how they are totally different from the preposition about, of course. And this is something that is also a very common mistake in the Spanish class, because you always hear students saying, estoy feliz sobre eso. Estoy preocupado sobre eso. Yes, the good thing about Spanish is that you don't need to be totally accurate to be understood. But this is if you are looking for improve all your skills, if you're looking for improve, did I say that? If you're looking for improving all your speaking skills, of course, prepositions, skills, handling prepositions in a very skillful way is essential. And you can start from this very basic verbs. When I speak about very basic verbs, I mean verbs that we use every day. Those are the basic verbs. Those are the verbs that must be learned in first place. Daily routine verbs, feelings and emotions, things that you like to do. Those are the verbs that you must learn in the first place. Alegrarse de is a very common verb, very common in Spanish. Because in Spanish, we are very close to the people. Like we tend to be very, not emotional. No. I don't want to say that we are emotional, because no. On the opposite, we're very happy, but we tend to be very close emotionally to the people. So we tend to use alegrarse as a way to say good for you, for example. Oh, me alegro por ti. Good for you. Me alegro por ti. So me alegro, this is a reflexive verb. And here we are using the preposition por, not the preposition de. This is important. Me alegro por ti. I'm happy for you or good for you. Alegrarse de, it is also used, but actually is not that common as alegrarse por. Important to be remembered. Importante recordar este detalle. Okay, if you have any questions or things that you want to be clarified, please let me know here in the chat, because I'm very attentive to the chat. Now let's see these verbs that we just got to know, but using different examples, like not exercises directly, but some examples taken from real life. Okay. Pensar. Now we know that pensar is to think about, and we don't have to say pensar sobre. We will say pensar en. Estoy pensando en mi futuro. I'm thinking about my future. Estoy pensando en mi futuro. Now, does it mean that we will never use pensar sobre in Spanish? It is totally banned? No. I don't mean to say that. What I mean is that the most common preposition to be used with the verb pensar is en. Sometimes, of course, we can use pensar sobre, but under specific cases like pensar sobre algo, to think about something, a very specific matter, topic, subject, etc. You'll say, but well, Veronica, in this case, it means my future, so this is very specific. Yes, actually, you can say both. Estoy pensando sobre mi futuro or estoy pensando en mi futuro. Yes. We won't say estoy pensando sobre when it comes to someone. Here it says estoy pensando sobre mi futuro. Yeah, well, actually, I will correct this because actually we can say estoy pensando sobre mi futuro as well. But we cannot use estoy pensando sobre when it comes to the people. This is the difference. This is the difference. Not pensar sobre alguien. Yeah, this is much more accurate. So you won't say estoy pensando sobre mi mamá. No, you will say estoy pensando en mi mamá. When it comes to thinking about people, in most of cases, you will say pensando en. Do I use the ando ending like we do in English? Example, estaba andando ayer. Yeah, this is a very, very good question because when we use ando, endo, the difference is ando is used for AR verbs and endo is for ER, IR verbs. The ando, endo in Spanish is going to be used only for present present continuous tense, past continuous tense, and present perfect continuous tense. Not as in English in terms of after a preposition, at the beginning of a sentence, expressing specific activities. In those three cases, no, we won't use ando, endo, to start a sentence, or as a headline, or expressing the verb. We won't use ando, endo after prepositions. No, not at all. And we won't use ando, endo verbs when speaking about specific activities. For example, I like shopping, or I like skiing, I like hiking. No, we won't use ando, endo in those cases, but only with this this kind of sentences. Estoy pensando, I'm thinking right now, I'm thinking about my future. Present continuous tense, past continuous tense, present perfect continuous tense, past continuous tense, and yes, that only for verbal tenses. Oh, no worries, Obi. Great question, because this is a very common difference between those two languages. Okay, and that's why we have this estoy pensando, estoy comiendo, estoy llamando, or estaba llamando, estaré, of course, the future perfect continuous, estaré llamando. Mañana en la mañana a esta hora, mañana en la mañana a esta hora. Look at the madness that I just said. Tomorrow, by the morning, tomorrow in the morning, I will be doing my homework. Mañana en la mañana, yo estaré haciendo mi tarea. Only for verbal tenses, only for continuous tenses. And of course, in Spanish, we have something called perífrasis verbales. Perífrasis verbales is only when we put two verbs together following a rule, and they will always follow that rule. And sometimes ing verbs, that means ando, endo verbs, might appear, but as a part of that combinations rule. I don't know if it's clear, but we have perífrasis verbales like llevar. Like when you say in Spanish, in English you say I have been teaching English for 20 years. In Spanish that will be yo he estado enseñando inglés por 20 años. Or you can use the combination that I'm talking about, perífrasis verbal, that is, yo llevo enseñando inglés por 20 años. The same is the meaning. That's the same mistake I had yesterday. The meaning is the same, but we just use different verb structure. So other times where we use ando, endo is with some perífrasis verbales. That means combinations of verbs, very, very specific combinations of verbs. Not in all cases, but in some of them, like with the verb llevar, with the verb continuar, etc. It doesn't mean that you always follow the verb llevar or continuar with ing. No, but in the case of perífrasis verbal, it will happen. Now that I say it, continuar. Yeah, after the verb continuar, you have to use ando, endo. But I think it's the only one case where we follow a verb with where a verb is followed by ando, endo. Yeah, continuar saliendo, continuar cocinando. Yeah, but yeah, those are the two cases: progressive or continuous verbal tenses, and those perífrasis verbales, which one of them is the verb continuar. Okay, soñar con. This is also very, very interesting because in English we have to dream about or to dream of. In Spanish we only have soñar con. That's it. Examples. Soñé con mi abuela. I dreamed about my grandmother. And never soñé sobre mi abuela. It won't make sense. It won't make sense at all. Preocuparse por, to worry about. Once again, we are expressing emotions, feelings, not way of thinking, way of feeling, yeah. Mi madre se preocupa por mí. Here we have the verb preocuparse, a reflexive verb. Preocuparse, as expressing an emotion, will be using the preposition por. Preocuparse por. My mom worries about me. Por expresses concern about someone or something. That's why the preposition por is the one that works with to worry about in Spanish. Preocuparse por. And as I shared some minutes ago, normally when it comes to feelings and emotions, we'll use the preposition por. Other two verbs that we saw in the list, and we will talk a little bit more about them. Casarse, con, to marry someone. In English, it doesn't have any preposition in the middle between the verb and the object pronoun, but here it has. It has no, sorry. It does. It does have a preposition, and this is con. Ella se casó con un médico. Casarse, another reflexive verb. It is like broken down when we conjugate it. So, ella se casó con un médico. Like she married with a doctor. That in English will be she married a doctor. But here we have to use a preposition. Sometimes actually I've seen in English like she's married to a doctor. In that case, we'll use a preposition, but once again, is not equivalent to the Spanish one. So in Spanish, will be more like to marry with. To marry with. And this explanation here says the preposition con must be used even if it's not used in English. Why did I write this down here? And this is an important reflection that I wanted to share. Sometimes we tend to think that if it doesn't make sense in our native language, it won't make sense in the second or the third language that we're studying. And this is not true. Remember, maybe it makes sense in your native language, but what makes sense in your native language probably won't make sense in the other language. And we have to be very aware of it, and we have to accept this reality, because we can't change it. We can't. Languages are to be learned, not to fight against them. So uh, even though you can say, but ella se casó con un médico, but that will be, she married with a doctor. It doesn't make sense in my native language. But in English, but in Spanish, that is the language, your target language, the one that you're studying right now, because of work, because of studies, because of love, in this language that you are studying right now, it does make sense. So don't fight against the language, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. That those are the rules. They are going to be followed, and this is not to impose the rules or the grammar. No, but the grammar is simply like a bunch of like things that we have to follow, a bunch of rules and statements and things that we have to follow in order to effectively communicate each other. Anything else? So this is something that we have to follow, and that's it. I know that can be very difficult sometimes when it comes to prepositions mostly, but it is what it is. So yes. Acordarse de, to remember. Te acuerdas de mí. In this case, we add the preposition de. Do you remember me? Here in English, we don't need the preposition de or any kind of preposition unless we are trying to remember a thing, like to do a thing. Oh, please remember to close the window. Okay, this is the only case we'll find in English to use a preposition to use any preposition, in this case to. But in Spanish, we'll use the preposition de always. Remember someone or remember to do something. In both cases, we use the preposition de. ¿Te acuerdas de mí? ¿Te acuerdas de cerrar la ventana? In both cases, we use de. And let's scan these examples with other context. Estoy pensando en mis vacaciones. This is, I'm thinking about my vacation. Important. In Spanish, we use vacaciones. Vacation in Spanish is plural. In English is singular. She dreamed about her childhood. Ella soñó con, like she dreamed with su infancia. Infancia is childhood. Are you worried about the exam? Are you worried about your exam? ¿Te preocupas por tu examen? ¿Te preocupas por? Are you worried about? Not directly translating about, but using the preposition por. He fell, this is the past tense of the verb fall, he fell in love with a Peruvian girl. Se enamoró de una chica peruana. Se enamoró de. He fell in love with, not using the actual translation of with in Spanish. Not con, no, de. Se enamoró de una chica peruana. Even if you use the this other case that I explained to you guys, to be in love with something, in that case, you'll still say enamorarse de. O mi hijo está enamorado de ese libro. My son is in love with that book. But in Spanish, you'll say de. Está enamorado de ese libro. So in both cases, falling in love with someone or falling in love with something or to be in love with. In Spanish, we'll use de. Enamorarse de algo, enamorarse de alguien, estar enamorado de. They insist on leaving early. This is a great example that we have here because the question that Avi made, the explanation that I shared is perfectly reflected here when it comes to not using ing form after a preposition in Spanish. Notice how in English we say they insist on leaving early. Why is that happening? Because in English we have the rule that if you have a preposition and you will use a verb after that preposition, that verb must be using ing. It doesn't happen in Spanish. They insist, this is ellos insisten or insisten only, en, which is on, and then we have the verb salir. Salir will be leaving in this case. But notice how it doesn't say insisten en saliendo temprano. No, because after a preposition in Spanish, you don't have to use the ando endo forms, the ing forms in Spanish. It's not needed. Insisten en salir temprano. Well, the common mistakes to avoid, I think it's something that I have been highlighting during all this class long. So, pienso sobre ti. No, not when it comes to people. We say pienso en ti. Se casó a un hombre. No, because that will be the literal translation of she married to a man. But in this case, in Spanish, we use with. Con, se casó con un hombre. Soñé de ti, not absolutely not, because that would be a literal translation. Instead, in Spanish, you can say soñé con. Sorry, this is, I messed this up. Soñé contigo. Okay, yes, here we go. Soñé contigo. With you, literally. Why is not con ti? No, because when you say with you, with me, with you, those words are just one word. Conmigo, contigo, and also with him or with her. But not normally when it's with herself or with himself, consigo mismo. Those words are just they're a single word. Soñé contigo. I dreamt about you. Soñé contigo. We're putting the preposition con and ti or contigo. Confío de ti, of course, very little translation. Let's see. I agree with you. If it makes sense in our, it might not make sense in another. Yes. Thank you so much for this. I have to jump, but I will be back. You have gained a subscriber. I will be watching more of. Thank you very much, Avi. I'm so glad. Mil gracias otra vez. Muchas gracias a ti. Thank you very much for being here. I'm so glad that you liked today's class. And of course, we have much more content if you want to catch up. And if you're learning Spanish, we have Spanish content explained in English on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and sometimes Saturdays. So we'll be here waiting for you. You're always very welcome. So, and then we have confío de ti, of course, that will be very literal translation from I trust you, or yeah, not even I trust you, because the word trust doesn't use any preposition in English. So confío de ti, no. Confío ti, no. That will be confío en ti. Teacher, what do you mean? Oh, Alejandro or Miguel, what do you mean with which part? What do you need to do? What do you need to to know? Oh, okay, yeah. Now, this is what's happening. Alejandro, Miguel, Moises, they are my nephews. Ellos son mis sobrinos, and they are always supporting me. They're always here learning English, and he wants to know what Avi says. So it's great because he's waiting for a translation. Él está esperando una traducción. Sí. What he said, what does he say? Okay, in Spanish, what Avi said was, estoy de acuerdo contigo si tiene sentido, makes sense es tiene sentido, si tiene sentido en nuestro idioma, puede que no tenga sentido en otro. Te agradezco mucho por esta, en this case, this class, por esta clase. Debo irme, pero regresaré. Has ganado un suscriptor. Estaré viendo más de tu contenido. And then in Spanish, mil gracias otra vez. So it's great. That's what I love from teaching languages. That, for example, Obi wrote in English. And of course, there are also people like my nephews here learning English. So he wants to learn more about what Ovid said. So it's great. I really love this dynamic of learning, teaching from one language to another. It's great. I really love doing these classes for you guys. And important, confío en ti. Like I trust you, even though in English it doesn't have any preposition. In Spanish it does have. Okay, so that will be confío en ti. ¿Cómo se dice en inglés? ¿Qué dijo él? What did he say? What did, because it's past tense, he say? Say in its original form because you're already using did. What did he say? What did he say? And a tip here. Always memorize the preposition together with the verb as part of its definition. Yeah, memorizing can be a way, it can be like a form to remember those prepositions. But remember, memorizing is not always the the answer. So what did he say? I said, great, excelente, excelente. What did he say? Remember the question mark. Memorizing is not always the answer. Why? Because maybe you can get confused if you mix it up with other words. So more than memorizing, I think using the verb. Like when you learn a new verb, of course, pay attention to all the prepositions that this verb will be working with, and immediately write them down, practice them, making your own sentences. It can be by writing down or simply speaking aloud because in this way you are not just memorizing but also assuming this content in such a way that you can remember it naturally later. So yeah, if memorizing works good for you, or you learn with memorizing, great. This can be your method. It is absolutely fine. But when it comes to languages, it's better to use. It's better using the verbs and verbs and their prepositions as much as possible. It can be by writing, by speaking, etc. But texting, of course, texting is a very good way to practice as well, even if it's texting to yourself or texting in groups eh, specifically designed to to practice by texting. So great. Let's recap. Many Spanish verbs need a specific preposition. For example, this is something we saw with depender de. we won't be saying like depender en, depender por, depender, no, depender, sorry, depender de. This is the correct one. O yo dependo de mi sueldo. I depend on my salary. I depend on my wage. Ah, dependo de mi sueldo. Dependo de mis padres. I depend on my parents. Dependo de mis padres. So this specific preposition will always be there with that specific verb. So that's why it's important to understand that a verb rarely works by itself. Normally the verb has a preposition to work with, one, two, or many prepositions to work with. These prepositions often don't match the English logic. Important. I highlighted this all this lesson. It doesn't matter if the logics between English and Spanish don't match. It doesn't matter. Each language is a single word, a single word, a single world. Okay? So, and it must be followed because those are rules to just make communication easier. Learn each verb as a fixed expression. This is very good. Can be memorized? Yes. Can be simply practiced? Yes, of course. Can be used immediately you learn them? Of course. Soñar con, pensar en, enamorarse de, casarse con, depender de, acordarse de, preocuparse por. Yes, as fixed expressions. This will make your journey in this language way much easier. Okay, it's my piece of advice when it comes to learning, memorizing, practicing. Yeah, always practice every day, at least 5 minutes a day. Well, 5 minutes is not actually realistic, like 15 minutes a day, if you're still starting, of course. Homework, because we can't end any class. We can end a class if we don't have a homework because we have to practice what we just learned. So write 5 sentences using 5 different verbs from today's lesson. Why those verbs? Why different verbs from today's lessons? From today's lesson, because of course here you will find different exercises that can be uh, reproduced, well, or that can be used as well. But if you look for 5 different verbs from those that we had today, you can realize how huge the list of verbs plus preposition in Spanish is. And you can start picking different ones to practice. You can make sentences combining them. For example, ella se casó con un doctor y aprendieron a pintar los dos. She married to a doctor and they both learned how to paint, how to draw. Yeah, how to draw. So in this case, you are combining casarse con, something that we learned today, and you're also using aprender a, which is another combination, of course, very common in Spanish, and that we didn't speak about it here, but it also exists. So you can find a lot of verbs working with prepositions in Spanish if you Google it, if you uh, look for it, and you can work with them too. So I'll be very attentive to your homework answers here in the comments below. Thank you very much for your questions today. Muchas gracias por las preguntas que hicieron hoy, todos los comentarios, por todo el apoyo, también all support. If you didn't see this full lesson, of course, you can see it later because once we finish it, the video stays in the channel, so you can always see it. So you can always watch it, no matter when. So great. Thank you very much for being here with me. Muchas gracias por estar acá conmigo en esta clase. Estaré muy atenta a sus respuestas de la tarea y mañana nos vemos. See you tomorrow with English. This for tomorrow will be mixed conditionals, condicionales mixtos. That English lesson, since it's advanced level, I will try to explain like English, Spanish, but since its main audience is people learning English, so I will try to be very clear in Spanish, explaining this topic because it's kind of long. So yeah, when it comes to basic and intermediate level classes, I will try to use Spanish or English to explain the target audience, and then if it's advanced classes, I'll be trying to use more from that language that we are studying. But if it's a very hard grammar topic, of course, I will have to be very, I will have to keep the balance for everybody to understand. So, see you tomorrow. Nos vemos mañana. Cuídense mucho y sigan practicando. Take care and practice and keep on practicing. Bye. Thank you very much. Muchísimas gracias. Hasta mañana. Bye. Kisses.